Hey guys and gals, it's Craig here and welcome back to Vinyl TV. I just listened to Bachman Turner Overdrive's Best on vinyl. Awesome. Sounded amazing. I love my records. In fact, I love analog recording, which is why you're never going to hear me bash it. Don't wait for it. It's not going to happen. However, this video is a little bit about digital. And I have some questions for you. And the first question I'd like to ask you is this. If I take an analog recording, such as a reel-to-reel master of an album or a song, and if I take that to a record pressing plant and have them make a record out of it, it's going to sound like a record. It's going to be totally analog, right? It's going to sound analog. It's going to be analog. That's the way it is. No one can dispute that. Okay, so, but now if I take the same analog recording and I put it onto a digital computer, a digital format, so I digitize it properly with high resolution, okay, done properly and professionally, and then I take that digital recording to a record pressing plant and have them make a record out of it, is it still going to sound analog? And if I didn't tell you that I digitized it first, or I had a professional digitize it first, and then take it to the pressing plant, would you be able to hear the difference if you had both records side by side? And before you answer that question, or before you say yes to that question, you might want to think about a few things, which I'm going to talk to you about during this video. Analog recordings have a personality of their own. Everybody knows that when you record something onto a tape, be it a cassette or a reel-to-reel, a professional reel-to-reel, there's a certain cushiony sound that tape gives to the, to the audio. And, we all know that. We knew it back then and we still know it now. Back in the day when all we had was analog recording, we were always trying to sort of, mask that as much as we could. The intent was to get as close to the original audio sound as possible without coloring it, unless we wanted to color it, like with equalization and compressors and whatnot. But we really wanted, that's why we ran these tape machines at 30 inches per second, as fast as we could in order to get the most accurate sound possible. But lo and behold, we still got some characteristics from the tape doing it that way, and that's just what we had to live with. Now we have digital recordings, and it seems to me, and I don't disagree with this, that a lot of people want to revert back to the analog sound because it had a certain warmth to it. Even one of the last songs I recorded, which was called Alone Tonight, I haven't done a lot of recording lately, but that one was done just a few years ago, right here down in the studio here, down the basement. That was done digitally, completely digitally, but I ran a plug-in through the output when I mastered it, and the plug-in was a tape plug-in to make it sound like it had been recorded onto a reel-to-reel tape. And the plug-in did a pretty darn good job. And if I listen to it without the plug-in, it just sounds and then as soon as you turn on the plug-in, the tape plug-in, it's like, there we go. So tapes and analog recordings obviously have some sort of organic, cushy characteristic to them. So we know that. Now, the question I really have burning in my mind is if I record something digitally, and I mean properly, with proper equipment, good digital converters, high bit rates, high sample rates, high resolution and all that, right? Not just, on your PC or whatever, on your laptop, but done professionally. Is that going to change the sound of the original audio? So let's say, for example, I have a singer and she's going to sing something into a microphone and I'm going to listen to it in headphones live as she's singing it. Okay? And although this is not really possible because you wouldn't be able to play that back unless you recorded it somehow, but if I record that performance digitally, done properly, as I said before, and then play it back, is it going to sound different than the live performance that I heard earlier? Of course, a live performance you can't play back unless you record it, but say I listened to the live performance while it was being recorded, and then I listened to the recording immediately afterwards, digital recording, would I hear a difference? And that, my friends, is a very controversial question. But my answer, and this is only my opinion, my very strong opinion, would be no, you would not hear the difference. Why do I say that? Because I've never done this experiment before. Although I've obviously done digital recordings before, and for all intents and purposes, I think that the recordings were very accurate. But the reason I am convicted to the answer being no, you wouldn't hear the difference, is because of the nature of the way digital recording works. And aside from the analog electric circuits that prepare the signal for the digital conversion, you shouldn't hear a difference, because just by the nature of the way digitizing sound works, it shouldn't sound any different than it did when it was originally being recorded. And I know some people are going to disagree with me on this, but the thing is that it's not something that is really can be argued because of the nature of the way it works. There's no logical reason why it should sound any different. The only thing that's going to change the sound is the capacitors and transistors and whatever that are in the preamplifier that's going into the recording, the digital recording device. Yeah, they can change the sound, right? But the act of actually digitizing the audio, and I mean properly digitizing it, not some, half-ass way that you do on your PC, properly doing it in a very expensive piece of equipment. There should not be any change in sound in the process of changing it from analog to digital. And it's just the nature of the way it works. So, if I hand you a bologna sandwich, and I say, here's a bologna sandwich, and you bite it and you say, oh, that's not bologna, that's peanut butter. Well, I'm sorry, but if you take the thing apart, you can see that there's a piece of bologna on there. It's not peanut butter, it's bologna sandwich. And you say, I don't care. I taste peanut butter. Then there's really nothing I can do other than show you that it's bologna, but other than that, I can't do anything to help you. And it's kind of the same way with digital recording, is that all I can tell you is the way it works, there's no logical reason why it should change the sound. Again, if it's done properly. There are things that can happen when you digitize audio. Of course there are. There's undersampling, there's beat notes, there's quantization distortion, there's jitter. There's all kinds of things that can happen. But we're talking in a perfect digital world, which does exist, where it's done with very expensive converters and equipment that is made to make it sound right. A cheap CD player, one that you buy from Walmart or bought from Walmart, let's just say, in theory is not necessarily going to produce the CD the way it should sound. The cheap DACs in that CD player, DAC is a digital to analog converter, in that CD player might destroy the sound. Who knows? I mean, if you've ever listened to a CD and thought, even like the first CD players that came out back in 1984 or whatever it was, these were primitive devices. This was the very first time they ever existed. So yeah, sometimes when people listen to them like, what the hell is that all about? Some people can really hear it. Now, the other thing you have to understand too is that if you're used to something, and then all of a sudden you listen to something else, it could sound worse to you, or it could sound better, depending on your point of view. So if you're used to records and you're used to tapes, and someone puts on a CD, you might think it's somebody's, scratching their nails across a chalkboard, because you're used to the warm, cushiony sound of a record or a CD, a record or a tape. Because those things do distort the sound. We know that. Analog recordings do augment the sound. That's what people are after. That's what we like. Digital recordings don't do that. But if you put it in a crappy CD player, yeah, it might. Because there's something called jitter, which not everybody can hear, but it's a slight timing error. It's very minute in the conversion from digital to analog, and it's got to do with clocks and all this kind of stuff inside there. And if it's not done absolutely perfectly, then there can be a sound that some people can hear. But it's not the fault of the format. It's the fault of the converter that's changing it back to analog. This is what a lot of people don't understand. So if you buy a good CD player with a good DAC in it, and some people even buy separate CD player and separate DAC, it just goes, of course, with audio it goes, the sky's the limit. Then you're not going to have that problem. Now, I'm not saying a CD is perfect. We know it's borderline, if they had done it any lesser quality, we would have been complaining. And some people still do complain. But, we can talk about SACD, DVD audio, the high resolution audio files that are done at higher sample rates and higher bit rates and higher sample sizes and, 24-bit and 192, 44.1, 48, 96, goes all the way up to 192. And that's really ridiculous, but that's just about as close to perfection as you can get. I know there's things that, you can, there's cutoffs. A CD has a 20 kilohertz cutoff. It just, boom, cuts it right off at 20 kilohertz. There's nothing above it. And this opens up the whole topic of, well, I can't hear above 20 kilohertz, so why does it matter? Well, because the signals that happen above 20 kilohertz can influence the ones below 20 kilohertz that we can hear. So if you got a 30 or 40 kilohertz thing happening up there that you can't hear, it might beat, as the term's called beat. It's called a beat note. It might beat with the lower frequency and cause a third frequency. That's what a lot of people say, well, that's what CDs, that's what's wrong with them, is they cut it 20 kilohertz. Whereas vinyl, it can go much higher than that. And that's why there's all these interactions between these frequencies and I understand this. I don't know how important it is or how much we can really hear it, but the theory is that the higher frequencies can interact with the lower frequencies and create harmonic distortions and all this kind of stuff. Why I'm bringing this up is because I read one of the comments where somebody said, I'm not criticizing, but the comment was, why would you buy a reissue of an album? When I showed that Paul McCartney album, it was released in 2000 and not just a few years ago. And no doubt it was digitally, put onto a computer and prepared to burn to cut to vinyl. So the person said, why would you bother with that? It's digital. You're not hearing an analog signal, you're hearing digital. He'd rather have the original pressing. Well, so would I, of course, but try to find one, right, in good condition. My explanation to that is that, yeah, it got digitized, but it originally came from an analog source. And digitizing it didn't change the sound of that, because by nature, digitizing doesn't. It's just the way it works. It doesn't change the sound. And that's what's wrong with digital recordings, is they don't have that tape-like warmth to them. They don't transform the sound or distort the sound like tape does. Right? So, that the album Paul McCartney, Tug of War, which I bought, which is a reissue, is still analog. Even though there was a digital step in between, it never lost its analog sound. just because it was digitized. That's what I'm trying to get across. And if you still disagree with me, well, then you try to research and understand how digital recording works and get back to me on why you think it changes the sound. There's a lot of mythology around it. Stair-stepping, no, it doesn't exist. It can exist if it wanted to, but if you take a trumpet and you blow a trumpet into a microphone and you look at it on an oscilloscope, you look at the wave, form, you study it, okay? And then you digitize that properly. I keep saying that because it has to be done properly. And then look at that, play that back and look at that waveform. You're not going to see any difference in the two. They're going to be identical. Now, somebody might say, well, I don't care. I don't care if they look the same. I can hear the difference. Well, that's the bologna sandwich analogy. Look, it's the same. It's bologna. It's not peanut butter. Don't care. Tastes like peanut butter. So that you can't. Sometimes you're never going to win an argument like that. But the truth of the matter is, if they both look exactly the same on an oscilloscope, that's the information that you've got. That's what you're hearing. If they look the same, then you can't tell me that they sound different. Hearing is very subject to a lot of things, and even just the way we perceive sound ourselves. Everyone hears things differently, But when you see information, such as like a mathematical equation or a trace of a waveform on an oscilloscope, you kind of can't argue with it because there it is, And so if you change something slightly in that sound, you're going to see it on there. You might not even hear the change, but you're going to see it on there. So I guess the bottom line for me is, I don't mind if the record was recorded from a digital master, even though it was originally recorded on an analog equipment, and then it was digitized in order to master it for vinyl, and then they pressed it onto vinyl. I don't mind that because I don't believe that the digital procedure in the middle there changed the sound at all. It's still analog signal going into the digital. It's still analog signal coming out. It still has the characteristics of that original analog recording. And I think that's the point I was trying to make here. But I think a lot of us miss that analog sound, which is why we're doing this. I love my records. I love just knowing that this was never digital. This is an original pressing of Bachman Turner Overdrive, Greatest Hits, whatever it's called. And I know that it never touched a computer. That's nice. I like that. That is cool. And it's a nice feeling. But it's one of those things that, I made the spaghetti on a Sunday afternoon when the sun is shining instead of a Monday morning when it was raining, pouring down with rain. It's just one of those things it's nice to know. But in all honesty, I really don't believe that it would have affected the sound at all if they had put this on a digital recording and then pressed it to vinyl, providing they didn't, change anything or whatever. I don't think it would have made any difference at all. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I am not God. I don't know everything. This is just based on years of experience and thinking about this kind of thing, watching people talk about it, discussions, having discussions with people, and this is the conclusion that I've come to. So you guys can let me know in the comments, please, down below what you think about this. And if you can, explain to me why a very good digital recording would change the sound of the audio. And if you do that, I may get back to you in another video and address those comments because it depends. We'll see what you guys say and what you come up with. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I love my records, don't get me wrong. I just try to put things in a different perspective so that you're not afraid to buy those reissues, because they really, just because they were maybe digitized doesn't mean they're going to sound digital, because digital doesn't have a sound. Okay. Thanks for watching. Keep spinning those records. Vinyl is final. Cheers. Thank you.